You're listening to the GC Collaborative Podcast, a resource for the worship arts team at Grace Church.
Well, hello, Grace Church. Welcome to the GC Collaborative Podcast. It is I, Ben Abusada, and I'm here with Luke Lauber, who just happened to walk away from the microphone. We have a great show for you today. We had the privilege of sitting down with three of my favorite worship leaders in the entire world, galaxy, actually.
Yeah.
That'd be Andrew from North Overland Park, Kurt from Olathe, and you, Luke,
Yes.
from South Overland Park. Represent!
Yes. See, this is why I didn't want to sit down and do this, because now it's like, how do I talk about the interview and how great it was when I'm just talking about myself? Which is ironically what we talked about a lot, humility.
Right.
And
humility.
here I am just saying, oh, this is the greatest interview we've ever done. Oh my gosh.
One of the keystone factors of being a worship leader is humility, and you have it.
Yes.
Well, Happy New Year.
I almost lost it all right there.
That's right. Well, Happy New Year to all of you. We are so glad you're listening. It is now...
We've made it.
2021.
It's January 1st, 2021 when this is coming out. So that means if this comes out, we've
New
made
Year's
it.
Day. Wow. We made it to 2021.
Yeah.
Now we'll see everything's going to change. And So one thing's consistent.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
One thing's consistent.
This
God
podcast.
Is good.
God is,
And this podcast.
So. Totally different directions. Humility.
Okay, we're not going to keep you too long because this interview is about 50 minutes or so long.
Yes, but lots of great stuff.
Yeah, so sit back,
just
enjoy.
Because I'm in it.
And we'll see you on the other side. Have a good one. Wow, this is like the Holy Trinity that I have before me. Three amazing people. You guys can duke it out on who's the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. But I don't know that would the Trinity even duke itself out?
Oh, you're starting off with that question? We just got started.
That's like a trick.
Yeah, geez.
Already so worried
deep
about these other questions.
Yeah. Please tell me they get easier.
Well, it's good to see you guys. Thanks for jumping on the podcast. Luke, you are in the opposite seat today. You get to sit on the interviewee side of the microphone, and we have you're the South Overland Park campus worship director, and over to your left is, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
He's 6 feet away, by the way.
We are.
Yeah, 6 feet away to your left.
Maybe a little more. I'm Kurt. I'm at the Olathe campus.
And then to your left is...
I'm Andrew. I work at the North Campus.
Is that Ed Sheeran?
It's the vaguely looking overweight Ed Sheeran. That's what I go by now.
That sounds like...
What happened to Ed Sheeran? Oh, that's Andrew.
Ed Sheeran's at North Overland Park?
Oh, man.
Oh, man. That could be... I think you got a new Instagram handle, my friend. Well, it's good to see you guys. One of the things that Luke and I have been talking about together about the podcast is it would be great for us to hear from the hearts of the people that help, facilitate and lead worship at all of our campuses every weekend. So thanks for taking time out of your day to come talk. I do want to just now we can't go through every detail of your story because there's three of you guys here. So if we can keep this relatively as a summary, I'd like for you each to just kind of summarize your journey, not your journey from baby to adulthood to now, but your journey of a summary of how becoming a worship leader, and maybe talk just for a minute about that. Let me start with you, Kurt.
Oh, okay, cool.
So you're setting the tone for the rest of the guys.
The funny thing is, so this is Kurt's actually our first repeat interviewee that we've had on the podcast. And it's funny because last time too, he's such a introspective, think about it, process it guy, but he always gets called first to answer questions.
Yep.
And it just kills me every time. I love it.
All right, so just real quick.
Yep.
All right. So I honestly never thought I would ever be a worship leader of any kind, just because I was super introverted, don't talk to me, I won't talk to you, I'll smile and wave, and that's about it, kind of a thing. But I used to be in a band just as the instrumentalist, guitar player, and whatnot. And we would travel around and we would do camps and lead worship. And we had a event coming up. We're going to be doing a youth night, and our singer at the time just walked up and he's like, "Hey, I'm gone," and just
Wow.
I'm leaving.
Just left.
Yeah. And I wasn't making fun of him. He has like kind of a beach bum kind of a voice, but that's just walked up and said he was out. Lord was telling him to leave. And so it was like, cool.
It's like, hey, man, I'm out.
Yeah, bro.
Maybe we should retell the story like with audio, like an audiobook style. Hey, man, I'm out.
Audio drama.
You're up, Kurt. Kurt, you're out, man.
I'm the waves. Was this on a beach? That's what I was imagining. I'm sorry.
Those seagulls, the VW bus stop.
Anyway, please continue. We get distracted very easily.
But he just said, he just felt like Lord was telling him, I need to stop, and so he was leaving to go off to college and pursue that career. And our drummer at the time, DJ, walked up and just slapped me on the shoulder, said, "You're on deck, Captain." And I was like, well, we can't, it's tomorrow, we can't just leave. And so I did it, and it kind of just didn't stop. We just kind of kept going from there and found that I really actually enjoyed it. And
that's good news.
Yeah. So, but from then on, it's just, I've always been kind of doing worship. I was a teacher before this, and so I was bivocational, but on the weekends it was kind of neat because I could minister to my students in that way, and just be able to bridge that gap a little bit. And I don't know, now I'm here doing it full time, and I love it.
It's awesome. Yeah, and you came with Kaylee, who we had on the episode. What episode number?
Last month. That was
December 2020's episode.
December, yeah. I think it's 6.
Yeah.
Give or take a few.
Cool. Awesome. Andrew, tell us your story, my friend.
Yeah, so mine's a little bit similar to Kurt's, that I also didn't think I was going to be a professional worship leader. It wasn't really on my radar. I come from a really musical family. My dad was actually a music minister, is what they called him at the time, out in Wichita, Kansas. And so it's music's kind of the family trade. My brother's a cellist. My sister's a professional violinist. She lives out in New York City. And I played the electric guitar. I was like the rebel because I didn't play classical music. So our conversations would be like, what do you think about Bach's Third Etude? And I'd be like, I'm going to go practice Crazy Train. So I just played at like churches, and, growing up, played at a lot of churches and stuff. When I was in college, I would go and just get paid, like a little bit of a stipend to go play at whatever church was like looking for an electric guitarist. And this was at a small Christian college. And at the time, I was thinking I might be interested in like audio tech, studio stuff maybe, or working at a church doing production stuff, something like that. And one of my friends told me, hey, there's this church starting out. This is when I lived in Kentucky, and this is about 45 minutes away. They said they're looking for a guitar player, and they'll pay you. And I was like, great, I'll be there. And it comes to find out that was actually the very first week of the church plant called Life Point. And I had like never heard of a church plant or anything like that. And it kind of blew my mind because like we were practicing in someone's attic. I had like a drum set and everything set up in an attic. And I was like, man, this is cool. I like this whole church plant thing. And so I kind of began thinking about church planting and leading stuff like that. And I got a job there working at KFC out in the town that church was in Ohio, and then doing like bivocational ministry too, working at that church. And really since the call, and eventually I ended up changing my major to preaching, thinking, well, that's like a valuable, flexible degree for ministry. And one way or another, just kind of found my way into worship leading. And I was attracted to Grace first because of how they approach church planting and sending out missionaries and that very missional focus. I've always loved that about Grace. So that's kind of how I ended up here. But now I've been leading worship here for 3 years, and it's been great. It's been awesome.
Awesome. I remember interviewing you on FaceTime for the residency program. Yeah.
Yep, back in my old college dorm.
Yeah, I remember
Good
that.
times.
All right, Luke, let's hear from you. All right, that was good.
Yeah.
Let's move to...
That's about how it goes, yeah. That's all I got, really. No. Is it how we got to Grace? I'm sorry, what was the question?
No, it's just your journey of becoming a worship leader.
Okay.
And then if you want to throw Grace in there, great.
Yeah. No, kind of same thing.
Extra credit if you do, I guess, is what I mean to say. But go ahead.
I love extra
You
credit.
didn't tell me that.
What is that credit? Result?
Yeah,
So far,
no.
Andrew's got some extra credit.
Guys, everybody keeps interrupting me. I'm trying to tell my story. No.
Tell it.
Yeah, I grew up in a soccer family, so that's where I grew up. And so nobody did music except for my mom. So just growing up in that, you as a child make conclusions in your mind. So music was always like girly to me, and so I stopped playing soccer, and my mom was like, well, you're going to do something, so here's an acoustic guitar I have from college. Learn how to play that. And she took me to lessons every week, and I hated it because, once again, I thought it was not manly and not sports and stuff like that. And so over time, the Lord, in his ways, made me love guitar, long story short. And so started playing guitar and went to college, got a music business degree. I led worship. I didn't like singing. I didn't like leading. I liked being in the back with the lights not on me, just playing guitar. That was awesome. So wanted to actually be like a contract player or a studio musician. I thought that was awesome. And then graduated from college and actually had a church who I played guitar with down in Texas. They just randomly said, you show up on time every week. You're consistent. Would you be interested in helping lead worship? Yeah, that was really it. It wasn't anything about talent or skill or anything. It was just, you're dependable and you're a musician. Would you be interested in leading worship? And it made me nervous because I knew back then, I tried to sing like Chris Tomlin or Ben Abu Sada for a lot of my life, but I just didn't have that voice, and that voice was like the voice that everybody wanted. So I was very, very nervous, and but just kind of felt like the Lord just said, walk this path. And so lots of stories within all that, but long story short, that's kind of how I got into singing, leading worship, that kind of stuff. And then I think just over time, the Lord has just really softened my heart for the church and seeing the beauty of it, and just what he does through worship. And so just kind of over the years had this love-hate relationship with it sometimes, but have genuinely just fallen in love with just worship through art, music, and just what that does in your relationship with the Lord and just the church as well. So, which then brought me to Grace at some point.
Yeah.
Does that count as extra credit?
That's a great. Yeah, that's good. You give
I
some
ended
points.
at Grace.
You get a couple points. Yeah.
Yes.
Still waiting on Kurt. I'm just kidding.
What's the score?
Yeah, Andrew's up by 2.
I'll catch up. Anytime. You go.
It's because he talked about missions, isn't it?
That's awesome. I think it's good for people to hear you guys' a brevity of your journey to becoming worship leaders.
If you want to hear the rest of my story, just go to lukelauber.com. I'm just
where you can buy a book, I'm sure.
Yeah. I actually have a book about I have a memoir.
There's a downloadable MP3 for an additional $5. Will I actually tell the story to you? Read it to you.
That'd be amazing if that was true.
So let me just kind of talk a little bit about. I want to hear your guys' heart and thoughts about some of the things that we deal with as worship leaders. I think a lot of people, they have a misconception about what we do on staff at churches. I remember back in the day, I'd get people would go, "Yeah, it must be awesome working at a church because you just play guitar every day and get to plan your songs and learn them and sing them, and I'm sure the staff is just entertained by you entertaining them all the time."
Bard.
Yeah. So that used to happen to me a lot, and I'd always have to tell the full story, which is, well, actually I picked up my guitar for 2 hours out of the entire week, and that was on Thursday night for rehearsal, because there's so much that happens at a church on staff. But if you could maybe talk a little bit about what are some of the biggest tensions that you guys find for you leading a worship department at your guys' locations. Either one of you guys can jump on. Just basically, what's the biggest tensions you guys find with doing your roles, and how do you deal with it?
I can go first.
Yeah,
I can bail you two out this time. I think so. My role is I do worship at our North Campus as well as the outreach at our North Campus. And so it's mostly like a set. My time usually is probably 75% worship, 25% outreach, depending on the season. Some seasons are busier than others with outreach stuff. But I find that the biggest tension I face is not being bogged down with urgent things as opposed to important things. Because something as nebulous as creating a culture of worship at a church, that's a whole lot of really, really important tasks that are very hard to schedule on a calendar. And it's easy to be like, oh, I'm just going to sit here and do things on Planning Center and do all these little tasks that are nagging at me, and completely miss the important, very much life-changing things that could be done instead that maybe are more difficult to quantify and hold on a calendar. For instance, like sometimes it feels weird to be like, yeah, I should be making sure that I'm spending time with people. Like that feels strange to be able to quantize that and be like, what percentage of my time should I be spending with the people on my team and just mentoring and encouraging and pastoring and stuff like that. That stuff is easy to forget about and instead focus just on the details and the things that can make us look good too with bosses or with whomever, and just focus on that stuff instead.
Yeah. Makes you feel busy too, like, you know, important.
Yeah, I think so. Kind of bouncing off what you said, Andrew, is that there's a lot. So the Olathe campus, it's still kind of in a way a church plant because it's still growing. You know, same as North, like it's still going up. That there's, and you're the same as me. It's just you. You know, and it's just me as far as production or anything goes. And so there's fixing the weekend, making sure things are working. And it used to be
students.
Grace students. And then before we were in the building, you know, like, I hope this board still works when we roll it out of the trailer. You know, it's all those little things that now that we're in the building. The biggest, like, tensions for me is just now trying to figure out, am I spending time correctly in every single thing? You know, and then on some weeks, there are some things where maybe it kind of falls a little slack because I spent more time on this. But recently, there's been just a lot of thought on my mind with all of my volunteers that, like, especially through all this whole year. And it should be, even not with this year happening the way it did, it should always be this way, but like making sure that I'm trying to help foster that relationship, and that I'm not just someone there who's, hey, I put the songs together, I do this and I do that, and I show up and play and then I'm gone. It's like, am I a valuable resource for them, you know? And so trying to make sure that I don't shy away from that. Because me, in the first place, anyone who knows me, I'm not, unless I know you, I don't just walk up and start talking to you. So making sure, trying to step out and go and take care of people, you know, and go and just be there for them. That sometimes that gets lost, you know, if I'm honest, you know, because I'll get busy doing something and trying to make weekends work perfectly. And I want people to be able to express their worship through the weekends. But it's not just that, like, there's a whole week left other than Wednesday and Sunday for us. And so trying to make sure that I'm keeping an actual team running, you know, and working together and being there for each other. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard.
It's good.
I honestly would say just a lot of the same things.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this:
minus
what
1
ways,
point for Luke?
Yeah. What ways, Luke, do you? Because I think, you know, part of the aspect of what we do, especially in the role of now, just because we're at South, which is, I mean, it's the bigger place. There's, you know, there's way more staff. There's more production people. Those kinds of things that are here. But I've been where you guys are at in the role of being in a smaller place, so you're having to carry different hats at the same time. But one of the most important thing for us as worship leaders is to have the foundation, which is our relationship with God. Yep. So Luke, how do you deal with that? Like, how do you find that time? And maybe talk about that a little bit.
It can. I think that is always actually a very fun conversation with people, as they assume because you work at a church, you know, you just sit around reading your Bible,
it's like
playing your guitar, you know. Yeah, exactly. And so, obviously, as we know, that's just not reality. And I firmly believe and have been in seasons where you can treat a church job like a regular business job where there's no spirituality about it. It's just getting tasks done. It's making sure people are, you know, volunteers are okay and in spots. And so those are not fun seasons or healthy seasons by any means. So what I honestly try to do is, I can't say I did it this morning, so I apologize, but most mornings I try to wake up at 7:30 in the morning and just, you know, take some time to be with the Lord in one way or another, and then come in around 9 o'clock and stay till about 6 every day, but or at night sometimes. But one thing that I've really had to do, because I for years was stuck in kind of the rut that Andrew was talking about, where you can get stuck on the task side. For me, it was, okay, I know I can throw a set list together. It's going to be okay. Like, it might not be great, but it'll be okay. And then it gives me 90% of my time to focus on the things I'm really bad at, you know. And so that's kind of the way I operated for a long time. And it wasn't until I feel like God just showed me that, like, you're spending 90% of your job on the things you're horrible at and 10% on the things that you're good at, because you can just kind of get by. And so now I've been trying to schedule out, like this morning, I schedule out, from 9 to 11, 2 hours to pick out next week's set list, to just really sit there and focus on it. And if it doesn't take 2 hours, sometimes it takes 30 minutes, and that's great. But to just have that time in my calendar to say, I'm going to spend time with the Lord. I know I can just pick, songs and put them up there. And some weeks that still happens because life gets crazy, but trying to just be mindful of the intentionality of that. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now with it all, is just, each morning trying to be mindful of, and that took all these things came out of a pretty big, crash for me of just being so stressed and worn out. And it's like, well, why am I in this place? And it's like, conversations with you been too at times of just need to slow down and refocus. And so that's been huge.
It's important. I think for us, for you guys leading worship and not having how many stories have we heard about worship leaders or pastors who go through some significant life event that destroys their ability to minister to people? I mean, we're hearing it with, lately, we mentioned somebody before we started, I can't remember their name, but like pastors, so it's important for us to be, have that foundation of what we're doing. If we're pointing people to Jesus, we got to have a relationship with them. You can't worship the God you don't know or have a relationship with at all, which is one of the values we have in our ministry. When we audition people, it's like, we want people to know Christ. If you're going to point people to Christ, you got to know him. And so segueing from us into our desire to build teams and to find people to be a part of our ministry, what are the types of volunteers? What are the qualities that you guys look for when you're auditioning people? What are the types of things you're looking for? There's obviously musicality and other things, but what would those things be? You guys, I'm just throwing that on the table.
You're talking like personality-wise? Or
Anything, yeah.
I have a secret scorecard for my audition process.
Whoa.
I have the real scorecard of can they play their instrument adequately? But then it's like, okay, how flustered were they when they walked in? Like, how are they dealing with nerves right now? Like, how are they? And I love to analyze people. I'm a little nerdy in that way, so I'm always thinking through that's right. I'm always thinking through okay, this person I feel like you can usually tell within 30 seconds how good a musician is just talking to them, because it's do they have a quiet, humble confidence? That's usually a really good sign. That even if they're maybe not the most seasoned player, they're probably a mature musician, to where if they agree to do something, you can probably assume that they'll do it. For the production side, this might just be my personality as a leader, but I really enjoy working with people that have a lot of initiative. I would rather have to slow someone down than speed them up, personally. And so, at our campus, we have people that run the production team. We call them producers, because a lot of times I'm on stage, so I can't have my I can't be watching over the production stuff as well. And these people, when I am shopping around for people that I think might possibly fit this role, I'm really looking for someone okay, Pro Presenter crashed. Are they going to freak out and call me, or can I just sit on the stage, make a joke about it while they restart the computer and figure out what went wrong? That way I don't have to deal with it and they email me about it later. That's really the kind of personality I like working with. And then I think ultimately the most important thing is always spiritual side too, do I sense this person is just looking for somewhere to play? That's always a little bit of a red flag for me. I don't necessarily think that should exclude someone from being on the team, because it does give me a chance to pastor that person and hopefully get them more aware of the spiritual side of leading worship. But I do think that's a big thing that we should be aware of just as team leaders.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Humility is huge, right?
Yeah, I think for mine, we're kind of going through that process right now in students. a lot trying to get students to help volunteer on Wednesdays, which is, it's always a little bit harder too, because they're still growing and they're still just sometimes figuring themselves out, you know. But as far as on Sundays go, for people who I have on stage up there with me helping lead worship, my big thing, I'm kind of like Andrew, like I don't talk a whole lot. And this is not meant to sound creepy. It's because I'm just watching you.
So glad you're on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm observing.
Yeah, I'm watching you and like just seeing how you.
Somebody's watching me.
Yeah, that's what I feel like right now.
But it's just to see how you react to things.
Straighter.
Yeah. But body language, like Luke is just slouching
Luke's
over,
nervous
just
right
leaning
now.
off. Yeah. So.
Wonder what his insecurity is.
But no, I just want to know.
Thanks for being kind.
Yeah. Like, how do you, whenever you're not in the spotlight, how are you? You know, how do you act whenever you're not being asked questions? You know, because that, to me, that's who you really are. Yeah. If I can see how you are when no one's directly talking to you, that's who you actually are in the moment, you know? And so, and as far as like people, you know, for musicians, you want them to have the skill, you know, but I'm not looking for perfection. If we were looking for that, you'd have an empty stage.
That's what the tracks are for.
I wouldn't be up there. But I want passionate people, you know. That's why I try to tell them, like, do you have the passion for it? Yeah. Okay, awesome. Like, can you play? Well, yeah, you can play. And they kind of go, and if they can carry it, you know, and everybody makes mistakes, and that happens, especially if they're in front of you and you're just staring at them.
Yeah.
You know, I just had a student like do kind of a pre-audition. I just wanted to get to know her. I knew nothing about her. So I said, hey, tell me your story a little bit. And then she sang a little bit for me. She had some notes here and there, but then we kind of, as we kept going, she got better. And so it's one of those things where you just want to, are they willing to learn? Are they willing to listen? And if they can relate themselves to me, then I know that they can relate themselves to anybody out in the crowd, which in the end goal, that's what you want. Because if they're leading, you want them to be relatable, and because that just shows that they're a good leader, that they can bring people along with them in leading worship. So
that's good. Some of the greatest worship leading opportunities aren't from a stage 3 or 5 feet above everybody's head. So it's out in the seats or out there, interactions with people. Yeah.
Well, I think that can be I think we can make the stage too big sometimes, you know, where we do believe like, oh, in order to really do something for God, I have to be on a stage. I have to be leading people, hundreds of people, 20 people, whatever it might be, where, I think there's just a lot to even being a musician that doesn't sing or whatever, that there's a lot of leadership that is, you know, as we've all talked about, not just on the stage. And that can be a hard thing, because in America, the stage is everything, you know, in secular culture and church culture sometimes too. And so, but really focusing on, you know, even for Jesus, I think some of his most impactful moments were just personally with people. And I think he moves so mightily in those ways. And so, but that can be hard to realize sometimes. So.
Yeah. And it's weird. It's kind of weird because in our culture, our Western culture is so weird, because everything that a lot of people would view how we actually do church gatherings is completely contrary to the things we're talking about. You know, when you know, it's a very, you know, we're centered up on the stage above everybody's head. Everybody's looking at us. Yeah. So we talk about, you know, these things and how important it is to be off the stage leading people in worship, yet here we are putting ourselves on a stage with lights on us and all that kind of stuff. So people assume that that's a very contrary thing, which, I mean, on the surface it can be, but when you look at our mission field, this is just how our culture is. Someday it may change. In 20 years it may be completely different. I know in some circles it is different, you know, but which leads me to ask you guys, where do you guys think or see, when you look at worship, generally speaking, worship culture, it actually has a culture, specifically within Western church and how we do church, what are you guys seeing, or what are your thoughts about where you think the direction of worship in our culture is going, and maybe say the next 5 to 10 years, or where do you hope to see it doing? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have one. This question wasn't on the list.
No, well, it kind of is.
That's a really deep question not having a list.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Let me text that. Okay.
Yeah, if I go back,
can I call a friend? No, I'm just kidding.
What are your hopes for?
I could go first.
What is your hope for Grace Worship? What are your dreams? Frame it in that way if you want. I'm trying to do it a more compelling way.
Okay.
Let's assume Luke wrote that question. Is that what you're trying to?
Yeah. Well, he's talked
You're saying it in a really sneaky way.
He's like, whoever wrote this question could have got a little better. I'll reframe it. Luke.
I can go first.
Yeah.
I think this is such an interesting time that we get to live through as like leaders. And one of the things that I've been seeing, just like I'm a part of this Facebook group that is like worldwide. It's just like worship and production people all over the world. And one of my favorite things about that group has been everyone is like, hey, what do you think about my live stream? Like, can I get some feedback from people about our live stream church service? And there are like some churches that are like huge gospel churches, and their live stream is just like incredible. It's like a movie. It's like incredible, the production level of it. And then there are like some churches that are like in Brazil, and it's one dude on like a piano, and they're filming it on a phone. And I think out of this, the bar for expectations is going to be much lower. I think part of that is because technology is making it more accessible to do like a live stream service. But I also think like the other day I was just scrolling through Instagram, and I saw like Elevation sharing a bunch of people that were doing covers of their songs. And like these are really talented musicians, but you could tell they were all just like shot on their phone. And I do think that worship music is going to move back into a more like maybe raw, a little more authentic. I think the songs that are being written are very approachable and easy to do in multiple contexts. I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of churches that are producing content start producing it in the understanding that this will be used in not just a big church context, but this will be used in a big church context, small church context, living room context, live stream context. And I think that will impact the resources and the culture of our church.
Do you think what's happened in 2020 has sped that up?
Oh, yeah. You think about, I don't remember who it was. I think I was talking to my father-in-law, who is a pastor of 2 small Methodist churches out in Kentucky. And like he's doing church online. Mm-hmm. It's like, he's a just part-time teacher, part-time Methodist pastor. They never would have considered that. They would have thought, oh, that's what the big churches do. But like they're doing church online now, and it's, you know, it looks different than ours does, but it's still very valid. Yeah. And I think COVID has been this huge accelerator of that adoption of the outreach of online church.
Mm-hmm. Cool. You guys have any thoughts on any of that?
Yes.
Good.
I have a lot, so I'm trying to whittle them down to. No, I'm trying to just not talk for 30 minutes. So I'm a circular talker.
Well, let me ask you this: how about this? If I can maybe direct a little bit of the thoughts. What do you see from your perspective when you look at Grace Church specifically? Kind of Andrew kind of talks about the culture as a whole. Where do you see Grace fitting into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think my heart, I think our heart and conversations that I've had with you, Ben, has always been just for people to express their heart to the Lord and however they've been created. And one thing that when I was looking at coming to Grace and moving here back in the day, one thing that I loved was just talking to you, and you really just sought for people to be who they are, and even in leading worship. And when I just had not been around a lot of that at that point, but you were, I mean, styles of songs would change, stuff like that to fit that person and their leadership. And
instead of trying to make you be Chris Tomlin.
Yes, thank you. We all know that'd be a train wreck. Although I never saw you smile so big at me when I did one of his songs, and that was the happiest. I felt like a child who just wanted his father's love, and I looked over and you're smiling, and I was like, I've made it indescribable. But I think there's so I'm trying to be careful too how I say this, because I don't think it's a bad thing, but I do think churches have can have become a lot bigger. There's a lot more production. There's a lot more of those things. And I think to some level there's navigation in that of how do you do that. And I think, in my opinion, from a spirit side of things, I think people are longing for vulnerability now more than ever. And I think there's that. It's been there. It's not like production or big stages take that away.
Right. Yep.
But it is that balance of, I mean, even with songs, it's, I mean, we struggle with, okay, like electric guitar player, how do you allow that person to play in their style, but still like be true to the song, like Lion and Lamb, you know, like that's a great example for electric guitar. It's like, how do you let a guitar player be true to their style and who they are, but also, hey, Lion and Lamb, the guitar lick's the guitar lick. Like,
you know? There's 4 notes.
Yeah.
Stop bending 3 of them.
Yeah. And so it's that, it's those tensions. Yeah.
Whoa, put that whammy bar away.
But it's that tension of, you know, how do you allow somebody to be who they are, and how do you allow, and that goes all stage, piano players, drummers, all that. And then we're coming together to do somebody else's song that's already been done a certain way, so how do you deal with that tension? And so there's even vulnerability in that. I think as a musician, to play your style takes vulnerability in certain ways, and that transfers into worship. And then as worship leaders, it is hard, you know, to the point made earlier of there's lights on you, you're on a stage, you know, you have a microphone, everybody's looking at you. It's a double-edged sword because some people can put you on a pedestal unknowingly, and so you can feel that. But then it's also coming back to the place with the Lord of, you know, I think about David, how he was kind of just the same always. He was always David, from being a shepherd to being a king, you know, and such a vast difference. And so it's us as worship leaders, just, you know, we are who God's made us to be and to continue to be that. And so I think that comes through on stage more than we realize. And so I think it's just for that to be more and more, continue more and more to grow in that, to encourage others in that, and to seek the Lord together on that. And I think if we do that as a ministry, I think that will bleed into the weekends. And I think people will feel that. And it's an intangible thing that you can't describe, but I think you can walk into a room and know when something's alive and when it's fake or, you know, dead.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not dead, but you know, and I think those are the things, like just a place of freedom. Because I think if you have that freedom on the stage, your room will be free and people will feel that. And if they want to raise their hands and shout at the top of their lungs, they can. Or if they just want to, they maybe had a horrible week and they're trying to process life and they can't, all they can do is show up. That's all they got that week. Then that's welcome here. And I think, though it's always my heart, is not that we have the loudest church, not that we, you know, but we have the church that truly encounters the Lord authentically every week, more and more. I'm not saying we're not there.
Yeah. I think and too, like, as far as what I do and really appreciate about Grace in general, and it's always kind of been this way even back 9 years ago when we first came here and it was just here, that it was already a different church. It had a completely different feel to it, but that wasn't a bad thing. You know, I think as far as Luke and Andrew, kind of what you're going off of is that we have to make sure we let this church, let the Olathe Church in North Overland Park, one, every church, let that church be the church for that area. You know, don't let it be just a copy. There's a reason the church is in this spot here. There's a reason the Olathe one is over there, the North Overland Park. That's in that area, in that community. And if you can be honest and you can be, you know, who you are, and yeah, we're singing songs by other churches who wrote them, but always remember when we're doing that we're here though. You know, let's not copy just what they do. And it's worship is for every single person. It's for someone to come in and connect with the Lord. But if we can always remember to let your church be your church, you know, don't try to strive to be this other one. That's them, you know. I think that's critically important because I've been in churches where they're like, well, they do this so well, we got to do it like this. It's like, no, not necessarily, because that may not work, you know. But just, I like what you said about honesty, you know, just being real with who you are, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like, thinking of conversations of when we started doing multi-site, like, I remember that was a tension of, like, okay, how much do we make stuff the same? How much do we, you know, give freedom? Because, I mean, even I'm looking at this circle, Kurt, Andrew, Ben, me, all completely different styles, of voice and everything. And, I think in my brain, it's like it would be sad if I tried to be Andrew, Andrew tried to be me, or I don't even try to be Kurt, but too good.
It's hopeless.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? So it's like, it's those things, but there is that, okay, how do we keep consistency, obviously, as a church, but I've just always admired that about Grace, about you and that heart, because it's not the easy path to take. Like, I just don't think it is. It's much easier to say, we are going to be the same. Everything's going to be the same. You're going to be like me, like that kind of stuff. And there's some level of that. I think you have to. But also, sitting in the tension of, okay, because we have had to make changes along the way of, we went a little too far this way. Let's bring it back a little, and vice versa. And so, but I think that's been a really cool journey, and we've seen so many cool, I think of so many singers and leaders and players that we have here that have so many cool styles that it's like, obviously there are those weekends where it's like you have to play this piano part, you have to play this guitar part, but I know like at North you guys have had bluesy weekends sometimes, and at South we've done different things, in Olathe as well, and it's like those are just so, like, as an artist that makes me excited, because it's like, we get to have, like, not that the other weekends aren't great, but it's like you get to, just experiment and see some sides of people. I remember one who's coming to my head right now is Josh Woolley, who, has a amazing bluesy sound to him, like Southern rock. And it's
rock
like,
and roll, yeah.
If you try to make him sing like, Chris Tomlin, or I use Chris Tomlin a lot because he has a beautiful voice. Let's be honest.
Right, sure.
I'm serious. Yeah.
No, I know. I'm not Chris Tomlin.
Why are you rolling your
offended?
eyes? But you know what I mean? But if you tried to make him sing like you, Ben, even, it's like he would sound horrible. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it just wouldn't be him. And so I think it's just cool that, anyways.
Kind of goes like the interview we had with Charlotte. We talked a lot about that with her specifically. Yeah, I think you bring up some great topics just within the things you just said.
I come up with great topics, just not great questions. Is that what you're trying to say?
No. But I think one of the things that people maybe are not aware of, or maybe I don't know that we've talked about it much, but I think the idea of transferring Grace Church, and I'm using air quotes, worship DNA from one place to the other as we plant, and that has been that was the thing when we started doing our planting and our not just our church planting, but what do we call these? Campuses. Thank you. Can't find the right word sometimes. The campus. It's what does it mean to take that from one place to the next? And, some churches that do what we're doing on a much grander scale, to them, that means you're doing these songs exactly this way, and you're going to do it within 15 minutes and 37 seconds, just like our main campus is going to do. That's not how we do it. We have a sandbox that has edges. It's sometimes we push the edges a little further to see how that goes, and then, like you said, we will adjust and we'll bring the edges in a little bit and go, okay, that's too far. Stuff. Getting the sand outside into the yard. So we try to definitely. That is, I think, and that's part of our culture is. We have always been a church of trying things, and if we're not trying things, and if we're not failing ever, then we're not moving forward to do anything significant. So I'm always fine with failing and doing something stupid, because we're at least trying to do things that matter.
Well, and I think that's the nice thing, even from like leadership. Tim and Brian, those guys are the same way, which I've always been super, super grateful for. And I know sometimes we made the sandbox too small, where it's like, I think to Kurt's point, we did have seasons where it was like, hey, we all have to do this the exact same way. Right. And then it would just either really succeed at one spot and then the others would tank, or, it's like, it felt weird because it's like this location's just trying to be really big and it's not, and the other, all those kinds of...
It's like we robbed the potential of all the locations because we required them to all be the same.
And
so it's been a nice journey of learning, for sure.
Oh, yeah. But I think that's the fun of life, though. It's you're figuring it out. You are taking chances, and I think of how far, I don't know, we've come, and we got ways to go in different areas, but it's just cool. I don't know, it's just really cool.
It's good stuff. So if you could tell something to an individual who desires. They see what you do, and they see the role of a worship leader serving full time on a church staff, desiring to do that. What would you tell them, Kurt? What would you say to that individual to encourage them?
I know that you're always called. This is great.
Yeah, it's great. So I know one thing that always pops back in my head that I didn't do that I wish I would have done whenever, not here, but years ago, is that when I first stepped into it, I mean, if we're being honest, I didn't take it as seriously as I probably should have. You know, that I wasn't, I didn't think about the gravity of what I was actually doing, you know, that I was kind of thrown into it a little bit, and I was more thinking about, will it sound okay? You know, is this here and that? But then the thought of like, I'm leading people in worship to the Lord. Like every word they speak, that's what we're doing. And so what I'm imparting like goes to them, you know? And so I just encourage them, like, take it very seriously. And that's not like a daunting thing. It's just know what you're getting into for that. Yeah. That you're being put in front of people to lead them. So where are you, you know, in that moment? Are you in a good spot with the Lord? Because when I am, oh my gosh, it's just the best thing in the world to be able to do that, because I'm being able to worship and people are just stepping alongside with me and being able to step into that worship as well. And so and this is an encouragement, just make sure you're there with the Lord every single time. Like you're right on there, because the sense of freedom that comes from that, for me, every Sunday or every Wednesday when I can be right in line with where I'm supposed to be at, that it's just, I don't know, it gets me excited, because that's one day, like I said, when Lord comes back and we're all together, that's what we'll be doing, you know, and we get a chance to do that together. Yeah. That just always know where you're at, you know, before you step on that stage.
Awesome. How about you, Andrew?
I think that's a really good insight there, Kurt. For me, I think I
thought he was going to say dittos.
Samey.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
As I was like processing this question earlier today or yesterday, I don't remember when, the thing that came into my head was like, whatever you're doing could be equipping you in a way you're not aware of. So interesting. Like I think back through my journey. And it's like, man, I'm really glad that I took learning electric guitar seriously when I was in like high school, because now I see like that was to equip me for what I'm doing now. Like it's really, really helpful to be able to do that. Not to say you need to know how to play that to be a good worship leader. Or when there was a season here at Grace where I did a lot of project management, or there was a season when I was an intern where I was like, man, I'm going to do some graphic design on the side, so I just have more money to save, and you know, just to squirrel away just in case. And all of those small seasons, it turns out they were times the Lord was equipping me with skills that I didn't think I would need, but I just kind of like, looking back, they were times where the Lord was preparing me. And I would encourage anyone who's thinking like, well, maybe that's something I'm interested in, like, don't wait another weekend. Like, go. There are churches that need, especially in this season right now, they need worship leaders. If you're even somewhat considering being a worship leader and you're not serving at a church, like, go serve at a church, because that will equip you for your future. You might decide you hate it. That's another thing, you know, or you might find out you love it. And like, I would encourage you, just whatever you're doing, do it like for real. Try to learn from wherever you're placed. And if this is where the Lord is going to plant you, then you'll get there, and he'll move you to that direction, and you'll be really, really thankful that you took advantage of all the things along the way.
Good. That's good. What about you, Luke? Anything to add?
That's all really good stuff.
Yeah.
So I samesies.
You know, it's funny. I always tell my daughters about, they've expressed interest in this, and I always tell them, I'm like, the biggest thing, and one of you guys said this earlier about, I think your journey, it might have been you, about how you showed up on time. You were on time.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
You're putting yourself in a position of, like what you said, Andrew, serving at a church, volunteering, constantly and consistently being put up put yourself in a position where you're, being used by God, and you start to build a reputation with people as well, and people see that, and being on time is huge, and doing things as unto the Lord, is gigantic.
Oh yeah, I've had when I used to work with students a lot, I had many conversations about I would rather use an average quote unquote musician who's consistent than an amazing musician who you can never count on. And so I completely agree with that. And one thing I would add too, just if you are wanting to be a worship leader, and I guess if I look at the I would have done this differently. I think I would say just seek the Lord, let that be your main focus, and put, allow yourself to be in situations where you can lead if God gives you the ability to. But I think I spent so much brain power for a while in my life of, how do I get to this place? How do I do that, make this happen? Where I wish I just would have used that time focusing on my craft and focusing on just being with the Lord and letting it come from that, and just sit in that place and allow him to, because the funny thing is he always opened the door anyways. I was talking to somebody about this last night where it's like, if somebody was asking me, because I was thinking about this question, how I got to where I am, I could give you like strategies. But the funny thing is I didn't have those strategies as at the time I was fumbling through life.
Just taking advantage of whatever in front of you.
You're just trying to do, you're trying to do the best you can.
You're moving.
But now that I look at it, it's like, oh my gosh, like God was doing all this stuff the whole way. But there's no way I could have been smart enough to, figure that out on my own. And so it's just that humbling, like, I tried so hard in these areas and they just fell apart. And then the parts that I just was obedient and consistent, showing up on time, those silly little things that I'm like, who cares? It's like he used in such profound ways, so.
Yeah, and it's a lot of times one of the biggest things, the foundation too, is don't make your identity be wrapped around this role. Your identity is not in the role that you play. It's in Christ, and it should be. You know what I mean? And if this is not the thing for you, you're just always pushing forward. If you're moving forward, God's going to open doors. If you're sitting still, nothing's going to happen ever. All right, so one more question. So one of the interview questions I would ask people in the past, and I don't know if this is too outdated, but I'm gonna ask this question anyways.
Can't be any more outdated than samesies.
I think it's so I'm gonna go around real quick to each one of you, and you just answer very quickly with one word, and I might come back and say why. Sloppy wet kiss or unforeseen kiss?
Oh gosh,
Andrew.
I don't know. I was playing guitar, so I kind of missed that. I missed that whole debate because I was just playing.
Okay, slide or no
sloppy.
slide?
So sloppy.
Answer on that one.
Kurt.
Sloppy.
Okay.
Sloppy. Wow.
Why?
Don't hide from your emotions, man. God doesn't.
Samesies. No, I honestly.
Kurt looks like he had a serious answer.
I know people don't like that line because it makes them feel uncomfortable. But for me, I'm not saying this is my opinion. I like that line makes me feel uncomfortable because I think of those times where I've pushed God's love away because it's made me feel uncomfortable. And so I just like that parallel. Yeah. So that's, for me, why.
Right. Yep.
So.
Do you have a why, Kurt?
So I always kind of thought the sloppy one, like, that is more, like, abrupt to me than unforeseen. Then the word, when I first heard unforeseen kiss, I was like, that sounds awkward. Like, the very, like,
that's weird, yeah.
That's interesting. Like, that don't sound enjoyable.
Sounds like that, that little boy's going to detention. You need to stop unforeseen kissing the girls at recess.
Yeah. And, so yeah, I like that. Yeah. The other one, the sloppy one, is just, I think it's heavy. I think it's more heavy hitting.
There's a reason that the argument's so memorable. It's because there's a good reason to use it, and that's because it's such a powerful metaphor. Like, it really is such a moving image.
Yeah. Well, and this is just probably more recent now, but like I have a little 2-year-old. She does not give clean kisses at all, and it is sloppy. But it's sweet though. Like it's just there's nothing, she's not trying to make it anything. She's just being honest and she's being real, and that's the way that when she gives me a kiss, it is not clean, but I love it and I cherish it though.
So that used to be a question I would ask at job interviews when people would interview for roles on our team.
And all three of us wouldn't have got the job.
No, actually it's different. Kidding. It's not even about the answer. My question, I always thought it was a good question, and I need to come up with something that's more relatable to 2020, but because that song's 10 years old now. But now you're going to be thinking, what can we use? But so I used to use that because I always thought it was a good conversation starter, because it's really not about the answer. It's about the thought process of a worship leader, because I think as worship leaders, what I look for is the important factor of what you guys just described is, there's thought behind the lyric, that you care about the lyric. And then there's the thought from the other side of the coin. If one of you three were to answer unforeseen, or have an answer that's more like, well, it would just really depends on the community. I mean, it matters to the community. Back then, 10 years ago, a sloppy wet kiss would have disgusted probably, I'm guessing, 80% of churches in America. I think 10 years later is probably much different now. But there's an aspect of identifying your culture, identifying your community, what reaches your community, and that kind of thing. So, your guys' answers are great. Just, yeah.
But which one was the best? Did you like?
I think Kurt is the only real answer.
Yeah, Kurt had a great answer.
I know.
Why are you so perfect?
I was like, I just like making people upset, and I wouldn't have gotten the job.
But there's
I like making trouble.
There's an aspect of pushing people, right?
Yeah.
And getting people outside their comfort zone. I think it's an important thing, but it's like, all right, when are those battles necessary and when are they not? I think in 2010, to me, at Grace Church, that battle was not necessary. And it was like, I know that's going to take out 80% of the people in this room from actually worshiping if I sang. Like, sloppy wet kiss. I was
going to say, I'm trying to imagine you singing that line.
I've never, honestly, I don't think that I've ever sung that.
How you'd sing it.
So
I want to see it.
Yeah, I guess if we put that back on the list, we're going to have that challenge. What do we sing?
Ooh.
So anyway, something to think about. So anyways, thank you guys for being on.
That's all I keep thinking.
Yeah. Thank you. On that note, I give you all three a sloppy wet kiss from the Grace Church Worship Ministry, because you all three are very appreciated and loved very much by our staff, our volunteers. I know our volunteers love you guys as leaders, and also our communities. So thank you guys for passionately serving Christ, and our staff and our volunteers in what you guys do. So love you guys. Well, that was awesome. Thank you guys again to all three of you and those two guys for...
Yeah. How do you even go about this?
I don't even know. But that was fun. I love hearing their hearts, and I think it's hopefully it's a good thing for everybody that's listening to be able to hear from all three of you talking about worship.
I think those are all very good questions to think about, sir. Yeah. Great job asking the questions.
Well, thank you for composing some of them.
No, I sent you some, and you didn't use one of them. You didn't use one of them.
Yes, I did. They inspired me.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm trying to think if there's any updates. It's January. We just came off of Christmas. Man, it was like everybody was running really hard, and we finally hit the finish line. And
all things said, I thought 2020, I mean, obviously there's craziness, all kinds of craziness, but God did some really cool things.
I would agree.
I think maybe one podcast, maybe just talk about that. I don't even know what happened in 2020.
Yeah. Well, the good news is we're kicking off a series.
That's right.
In 2 days on January 3rd, 2nd and 3rd.
Is it really 2 days? How do you know that?
If this is coming out on January 1st, then it would be the 2nd and 3rd. That series comes. So, and it's called Forget 2020.
Forget 2020.
But it's not just Forget 2020. It's with a question mark. Forget 2020.
Ooh. I'm glad we went that way instead of the exclamation mark. Forget 2020.
Right. Yeah. So that'll be good, because we'll be actually sitting down and as a church and thinking and pondering about the past 365 days and praising God for what he's done, even in the midst of uncertain circumstances and craziness. There's always something to be thankful for. And I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for this church and for this ministry and for everybody that listens.
You know what I'm thankful for?
What?
The accept or decline button on Planning Center. And as always, we ask, there's nothing worse than a question mark unless it's at the end of a series title, Forget 2020. Besides that, though, it's not fun to have a question mark. So if you could accept or decline any planning center requests that might be in your queue right now, Grace Church Worship Department would greatly appreciate it.
Amen. We'll see you guys. Have a great month.
Thanks for listening to the GC Collaborative Podcast. If you have any questions or would like more information, check us out at visitgracechurch.com.